Hey there, everybody. We were out yesterday and I was permitted to liberate a few plants from what I would consider some substandard care. And so um, we are just depotting them now. And I thought that some of you folks might like to see what I'm doing. For those of you who are new here, welcome. When I get new plants, I take all of the potting soil out as much as I can. You can see there's still a little bit in here, but so that's what the bucket of water is for. I'm going to try really hard not to disturb the camera too much while I'm doing this, but so I will give a little bit of a dunk and then I'll tease apart these roots. The roots will generally have a little bit of an exudate when you get them really, really wet, and it makes it a little easier, but sometimes, depending on the mix that's being used, you may have more difficulty. So it's worth it, in my opinion, to let the plants dry a little bit and then tease apart the loose dirt, the perlite, the drainage materials. If they are using a wetting agent, those little green plastic beads that you see in a lot of nursery plants, those also come out. You can see that I have a bucket inside this container, and the reason for that is that this did have a little bit of those wetting beads, and I try really hard not to stick those into our system. There are microplastics in the atmosphere and being transmitted by birds and by rain and by precipitation and by wind, but there's no reason to add to it. And so what I do is I will scrape clean everything and then collect it up. If it's got wetting agent or microplastics or has like a bad smell, or I notice that it's got like a weird sulfury type of smell, or if I notice that it came from a mixed fertigation line, I generally will take everything I can out, rinse it as best I can, and then try to pass this dirt off to someone who wants it. It's not worth throwing it out, I think, but it also allows me to find things like this. So in here, you can see this root is coming down, but then looks as though it hit the base of the pot and went back up. And so I'll try to tease that apart, but once you've gotten it pretty well done, and I'm just agitating the bucket of water here. So once you've got it pretty well rinsed, you can make sense of where a lot of the exploration roots, these guys, the thicker, larger feeders, those are more able to break ground, and then the littler ones, the hairs, are more of a feeder root. And you'll see a large concentration of these up at the top of a lot of pot-bound plants, because that's where the hydration is going. And they might fertigate with some kind of like emulsion or salt-based thing, and sometimes they water too deeply and sometimes they don't water enough. But once you've gotten everything out, we're gonna take our handy little knife. Okay, I have no affiliation, I just have two of these, so it makes it easier for me to just kind of, when one gets dull from cutting through some of this soil, I can go and do another and swap them out a little easier, and then I can just spend a little bit of time sharpening. But so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this corm here and I'm going to cut as straight down through the base as I can. Okay, so I'm hoping that you heard that little crunch crunch. And so when I pick this guy back up, you'll see this one stalk of hosta with a whole lot of root mass to it, right? And so he goes in the bucket, they go in the bucket to soak, and we're going to take a look at where else we can cut through this mass to preserve as much of the central bit. We want to make sure that anything we cut off has enough roots to help sustain it in its new spot, but we do want to try to get as many of these guys apart as we can. And so I think our next cut is going to have to be through here. That makes me a little nervous. Maybe we'll cut like that. We'll cut through like that. So we'll disentangle the leaves. It's okay if you lose some. You can see that these guys have been a little damaged. This is what I mean by liberating plants. I take things that look like they were hurting and I abuse them a little bit further, and then I plant them out somewhere really nice where they get to live their best selves and live their best lives. So now that I've got my spot, I'm just going to come back with my knife and I'm going to make my cuts. So this guy did not get a whole lot, which is somewhat unfortunate, but we're still going to plant it out. We may give it a little bit of depth. These guys are actually pretty robust when it comes to splitting and transplanting. There is a little bit of risk from doing it this far into the season, and with these having progressed to the point that they are at, these were likely grown in some kind of heated greenhouse space over last season or over the dormant season, and then brought to the nursery that I ended up taking them from. There is something to be said, I guess, for continuing to support a nursery that does poor practices. I'm actually not too concerned about it. You know, if you find that there's a nursery near you that tends to be a little haphazard in their ways or doesn't have the most attentive folks, that was a good separation right there. Look at all that healthy rootstock and root mass. Broken leaf. Take it off. We'll clean these guys up in just a minute. You can see some of the roots coming out from a little bit of damage, but I'm not too worried. These are likely to do pretty well. So these guys are now going into our bucket right in here. You can see how much dirtier the water has become. And so this will have the roots that came off cleaned up from it. And then we'll probably bring that down the road to our neighbor who is a master gardener and does a lot of gardening projects and community service works as part of her Master Gardener certification and program. So we'll be sharing that, and I'll show you guys where we're putting these. Be back in a sec. Alright, so we're down at the base of the main tractor path. You may remember us talking about this space before. I've been pushing small amounts of that bagged soil down into spaces where we are then seeding out things or planning to transplant squashes and other cucurbits into this space to help overrun the spaces in between trails and add a whole lot of biomass to these systems prior to leaf fall. But you can see one of the new hostas right in there. This will signify that it is a stock bed or a growing bed, and it'll be pretty. And then I have also another consideration that you folks might think about when you are planning these systems yourself is how the texture of certain plants will look against them. So think like these wide leaf blades compared to and contrasted against the shape of these ferns. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I have a whole bunch, and so I'm thinking about moving some or just letting them do their thing and spread. There are a few in there that are just kind of a little bit covered up by the wood chip, but the nice thing about them is that they are very, very shallow rooted, and so transplanting them is kind of a breeze. You may get some shock, but they're generally going to pull through if you just keep them well watered in. And so going around this side, you can see a few more of these little propagation spaces, and what I'm hoping to do is bring compost in from the chicken yard, and we're also going to be emptying out the rabbitry bins very soon. And so these will get composted and mulched so that there's less chance of things growing out, but we do have a few more seeds to transplant as well as a few more herbaceous perennials to move back here. And so that'll be our consideration. We're looking to just kind of concentrate the fertility and the efforts in a few key locations that are well defined. And then from here, the things that do well, we can push back further and further as we chip more trails and clear more space for things. But this is going to be the work for this year, is pulsing out these small propagation spaces and small garden beds. You can see in here we have the Monarda, and then some various and sundry seeds that are starting in here. And so we have some 40 different types of seeds in here. This isn't really so much for a specific crop as I want this all to be interseeded, and then as some of our woodier perennials and longer term planned food plants come into production, this bed will get a revamp and they'll be interplanted so that there is kind of a thick cross seasonal or seasonal spanning blend of intense polyculture in this space. But so those are some of our considerations. I do this for just about every plant I get because I don't know what kind of salts were flushed through the medium, and I don't know what kind of plastics or wetting agents are in there, and those can throw off the balances in our gardens that we have considered in designing them in the first place. And so it kind of stinks when you have all of your work planned out and all of your drainage right, and then you throw a plant in and you're like, oh my gosh, it died so quickly, why? And it turns out it was overwatered because you had planned for needing more water, but you didn't plan on the wetting agents, or you didn't count on the number of salts that were in the pot from not being flushed enough times with clean water, and you suffer a setback in your soil microorganism populations. So these are some things that we think about, and I hope that this has been thought-provoking and gives you guys some courage when it comes to attacking the splitting of brand new plants. I mean, they were damaged, so I got them on sale anyway. But now I just got 5 more for that same on sale price. And even if only one of them survives, still got the one for sale. So it's kind of a win-win as far as I'm concerned. But I'd love to hear how you guys think about this. What are your hang-ups when you're getting new plants? What holds you back from splitting them? Being more adventurous, taking them apart and seeing what their habits are like. Drop us a line in the comments. As always, thanks for watching. Happy planting.